Hello, everybody, and welcome on behalf of the Gnostic Center to this webinar series, All Life is Yoga. This is the first webinar in the series, and we are planning to have it going on through the year to commemorate Sri Aurobindo's 150th year, which began on 15th August this year. As the theme suggests, we are going to take up contemporary issues and look at them with a view to understand deeper insights from a consciousness perspective of how to engage with these issues in our daily lives from a deeper poise, from an inner poise. I would like to invite Shumita Ghosh, who's going to be moderating today's session, and she'll be introducing the panelists. Shumita herself is into a very innovative venture where she started a company which has 2,000 artisans. And because there was a shortage of funds, she decided to turn to the artisans themselves and make them equity holders. And that's how the company was started, Rang Sutra. So it has over 2,000 artisans today, a remarkable venture. Shumita, would you like to please begin now?
Thank you, Anuradha. And hello, everyone. Welcome to today's conversation. Can one practice business with a yogic attitude? Is it possible to do business with a yogic attitude? It is common to view spirituality and business as mutually exclusive. If all life is yoga, then how does one integrate running a business with all its focus on achieving business targets, deadlines, profits, and its inherent competition with practicing spirituality? Today, we have 4 such practitioners of both business and spirituality who will talk about their experiences in integrating the two. Let me begin with introducing our panelists. I will start with Dr. Pariksith. Dr. Pariksith is the co-founder and CEO, medical director of Access Healthcare Physicians, one of the largest healthcare service providers in Florida, US. He has co-founded several other healthcare organizations and received many awards for innovation, entrepreneurship, and a focus on improving patient care. He has also co-authored many books, and we will begin the session with his experiences. But before that, I will also take the time to introduce our next panelist, who is Tong schraa-liu. She's the founder and CEO of Integral Transformation, an Amsterdam-based international consultancy firm and think tank with active presence in several countries around the world. Tong has more than 20 years of experience in catalyzing whole system transformation for organizations. She has co-authored the book Responsible Global Leadership, and she will be sharing her experiences after Pariksith. Third, we have Amita Mehira, who is a visionary and dynamic leader, heads the Gnostic Center, as well as India's top horse breeding farm. She is a recipient of the Outlook Business Women of Worth Award and has served on the governing board of Auroville for many years. Last and not the least, Amit Gujral is a fashion designer and businessman with over 3 decades of experience in running a successful garment factory. His work involves continuous interaction and interchange with people on both sides of the business, the supply side as well as the demand and customer side. Amit believes that in the dictum that all life is yoga and consciously strives to practice this in his business and in life. Welcome all 4 of you. I am excited to be moderating this session. And we have 3 sections to this conversation, 3 broad sections. We will start the first round of discussion with each speaker speaking for 4 to 5 minutes on the overall theme, can one practice business with a yogic attitude? And please feel free to share your thoughts on the subject. At the end of 4 minutes, Anuradha will sound a warning bell. Anuradha.
Can you hear?
No. Yes. Okay, we heard that. Just to ensure that the discussions don't go free and flowing all the way, she will keep us on track. She will help us to keep to our time. And at the end of 5 minutes, she will give a very definitive stop. Okay. So let us start off with Pariksith. Would you like to begin?
Sure, absolutely. And I thank everyone for this opportunity and this privilege. And right off the bat, I want to file in a disclaimer that I'm as imperfect as anyone else. So please take everything as a work in progress. It is not perfected, but it all started with a dream and or probably more a vision when I was very young, and suddenly I decided to have a change of course and become a doctor. And when you are a teenager, you want to help and you want to fix the whole world and you want to heal. But that ideology, that dream has persisted. The challenge in bringing it into real life, even as a physician, where we are blessed to be at least trying to help people, has been tremendous, because the moment you go into the practical world, you realize how limited you are as a physician. And then as you want to try to grow your services more and more to patients, you realize there's a huge gap between the intent and the execution. I've been running this company for almost 20 years with the help of some amazing people. And that's probably the best thing that that happened to me. I was blessed with a great mentor who is almost like an executive coach, was able to look back at me and give me honest feedback. And so whenever there's a doubt, I could always look back and go back to the original impetus and vision, which is to try to grow, try to widen oneself, try to be sincere. It was not very difficult to be humble and simple because, coming from a background where we did not have much, that was easy. What is difficult is translating that vision into our lives, my own life, and then in the life of the corporate body, which is an extended body of who I am and who we are as a team at the top, to see that and to constantly work on it. That has been the biggest challenge. What sustained us was not only the being surrounded by amazing people and mentors, but also trying to create a culture of integrity and quality. That kind of, I think, has set a little bar, a minimum bar for the company, although there is so much to be done. And we've seen multiple failures on my own and of course in the company, which always reflect on me. But the vision is to try to provide a service, provide a value to the community, to our patients, our physicians, our employees, and hopefully to consciously or unconsciously, they can pick on the beautiful aspects of our line of work and maybe incorporate it in some way and hopefully heal, bring a healing touch. And that was always the most important thing. Creativity, we love to be creative, whether it's in the IT field, whether it's in the education field. And we also developed, created a foundation about 17 years ago to help extend this message and this vision, whether in the US or in India, to children and women, and to create skills among our less endowed or sections which don't have the privileges of life, but also to try to create leaders. And that was facilitation. We have seen multiple failures, but there are points of light, and we see if you can impact one person, one life, or even yourself, then you see that your personal growth is actually together synergistic with the company's growth. So I think it is a work in progress. We have experienced good and bad of life. We worked with a corporate entity for 10 years, and it was quite a shock to our system because we did not realize that there are businesses that see lives and humans just as numbers. And it was quite a hard, rude awakening. Fortunately, we are beyond that. But that contrast makes us realize that we have to be able to figure this out and live with that integrity, with that humility and the sincerity, bring those qualities in our life and hopefully extend it across the whole organization. That's really it. I would love to hear others, and thank you.
Thank you, Pariksith. You have put it together beautifully. We now go across to Tong. So Tong, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Shumita. And thank you for Gnostic Center to create this meaningful event. And thanks for practice to open up this session with this humility. Indeed, we are all in progress. And I also want to thank to see these new friends and old friends, many faces we have been knowing, and also the new friends to join today. For me, I would say I have experienced in my first 13 years of being a consultant and running a global consulting firm, not my own firm at that time, this was international consulting firm. I experienced this exclusively mutuality, mutually exclusive side of inner work and outer work. I think that was also one of the major trigger for me to ask for more on my own path, because I was 12 years on Sufi path, and I noticed after 12 years that the inner work was continuing, but at work, nothing changed. My nature, my ego, my personality structure was the same. And that was one element. The second element was also when I was in that industry, advising clients on their business growth, on their role in society, I noticed the knowledge and principle that guiding the organization business to transform was not sufficient. I didn't see any high knowledge and principle that guide that. I was really concerned and struck. And that type of work, I feel I could not continue. And also how I see our business, that the employer of mine, when I was leading that company, how business was run, was not in accordance with what I understood, what is organization's essence and what is role in society and what is role of people in the organization. So with those three concerns and questions, I prayed ardently to divine to help me on both my personal path and on professional path. And I was miraculously bestowed with Mother Sri Aurobindo's teaching. And then all questions on these three areas was answered. And that was really the seed for this creation of my company 13 years ago. So first 13 years I was in normal corporate life, and the second 13 years was creating with the intention and with the vision of Mother Sri Aurobindo's about this integral transformation, both of myself, my team, and the world around us. So I feel like that creation process of this business, it was so inevitable. I cannot do otherwise. It's something really, it's not out of need. I have to make a living, but just really from inside out, the time was right. And that leads into the topic, key theme of our today. So what is a yogic attitude? And for me, there are several elements. I feel that the first yogic attitude has to do with using whatever we're doing, may it be creating a business, may it be doing work, may it be our professional life, may it be our family life, using whatever in life to cultivate the condition for our growth of our consciousness, for our self-fulfillment, you know, for this spiritual unfolding of our soul's purpose on life. So if that is the mean, so then the rest is the occasion for that to manifest. I also see another element. So using the work to unify ourselves, using work to discover ourselves, to serve, and doing the work for serving, to consecrate work to our inner divine and divine around us, above us. And second element of yogic attitude for me is that when I'm running business, my ideal is really about how can I be in the business and above the business at the same time. And then we are doing something which is that something higher above is guiding this business to make impact and contribution it's supposed to make in the world. And so the third element is very much this yogic attitude sounds like discipline, sounds like self-restriction. But I feel that if we do give priority to the fulfillment of our soul's purpose on earth, to the blossoming of our life's force in life here, blossoming our true potential, then yogic attitude is so natural to do, because why do we take up yoga? Is to fulfill our soul's purpose on earth, is to blossom our highest potential. So that's why yogic attitude is nothing contrary to self-restraint, rather to make our life more full. So that what I see that yogic attitudes can be done with joy and delight and enjoyment. Thank you.
Just a
Thank you,
request
Joy.
for everybody to keep themselves on mute except the speaker.
Thanks, Anuradha. So next we go on to Amita. Amita, please share your views on the topic.
Well, okay, very good evening, and this topic, can business be done with a yogic attitude? Actually, I just like to first, for myself, explain what I mean by yogic attitude. I think each of us have our own definitions, but what do we mean when we say yogic attitude? Business, we understand. Business is anything that is where there is a commerce, where you're producing, a product or a tangible or intangible that you offer to the market. Now, there are various kinds of business, but my own, as you all know, I breed racehorses. I have a stud farm, and so my business is to produce young horses that can go on later on to race. So when I look at what I mean, what I mean as yogic attitude, I would say that there are 4 or 5 main elements to a yogic attitude. One, karma yoga, which is remember and offer. Any work that one does or I do or is done with the attitude of remembering the divine or the supreme and offering one's work to that supreme has this element of what we call as yoga. The second is, of course, the very famous term nishkama karma of the Gita, where you do your work without expectation of what result the work is going to bring. And that is a very difficult attitude to really adopt, because sooner or later we do get caught in expectation of result. And I would say that that is something, especially when you're involved with trying to produce something, the best. You're trying to be the best, give the best service, produce the best horses, or whatever you might be doing. For myself, it's that. You know, you have to be able to still keep that perfection, to be able to still produce something that is, you know, the best you can do, and yet to offer that and do it without um, that expectation of result. Now, how do we know that there is an expectation of result or not? One, of course, is when for me, if I lose a race, or if I don't win, or if I do badly in my business, then there is the sense of despair, or depression, or blaming the other, or finding ways of getting out of it. So I think that that poise of nishkama karma, in the end, to surrender everything to the divine. Each time one does something, keep in mind that there is a larger picture, and if one doesn't do well, or one does well, in the end, it's for us to change that, not to become complacent, because often a lack of, I think, complacency, laziness can also be substituted for nishkama karma, but that is not the same. It's quite different. To keep a very clear sense of quality and hard work is very important for me. And the third is, of course, samatha, equality of consciousness, an equipoise, and a willingness to bear the consequences of whatever actions that one has done or another has done in one's organization. Sometimes, we have to take the brunt of many things that we don't do ourselves, but we are responsible for. And in the end, the buck stops here. So you know that, you have something to do, some work to do, inner work to do, outer work to do, reorganization, and so on. But I think beyond this, what I want to say today is um, I think I'm in a business of producing live young animals. It's not an object that you can pack up in a box. They have to be cared for every day, every moment. You have beautiful young beings which you're with all the time. And I think the importance of love and compassion in whatever work one does, in whatever relationships one has, however um, difficult they become, or whatever the adversity of circumstances push you into, to maintain that throughout is, I think, the greatest challenge that we have, or I have, as a businesswoman, and so on with customers. This whole interface between when you're selling a product, you have, whatever it might be, you have a customer in front of you, and that's when you really, really have to make rise above your own ideas, your own ways, your own preferences, your own idea of what something might cost or may not cost, the kind of response you might get from your customer. So I think one of the things that I have personally been working on, which I want to mention, is anger, impatience, what should I say? Sometimes disgust and wanting to throw it all up. But each time when these kinds of emotions enter me, I think what really saves me is love and compassion. whenever I can remind myself and reflect on that and understand that, in the end, we're all human and we all make mistakes. Thank you.
Thank you, Amita. That was very insightful, especially the love and compassion bit, which is something which I think is a driving force. So I wanted to mention that at the end of 1 hour, we have 15, 20 minutes, maybe more if needed, time for question and answer sessions. So please note down your questions and put them in the chat box, and we will address them later. So now over to you, Amit. Let us hear your amazing experience of the last 3 decades in a very competitive business.
Yeah, thanks, Shumita, and thanks everyone for this beautiful opportunity to share. I mean, what I feel is a journey of growth, both with business as well as my own inner being. The proposition today before us is whether business can be conducted with a yogic attitude. And I would say that my own experience has been that business conducted with a yogic attitude is actually one of the most effective tools for one's own sadhana. So what is yoga? I mean, first we need to understand that what is yoga, and it could be any practice or set of activities done consciously for one's own advancement and inner growth. And when Sri Aurobindo says that all life is yoga, what he is pointing us is towards the fact that any life activity, and business included, can be a tool for that inner advancement and growth. Now, the corollary for me, to the all life is yoga is also that yoga is practical psychology. And it's these two statements of Sri Aurobindo's which have literally formed the bedrock of my own inner journey. I have over these years, learned that there is always a direct correspondence between whatever is happening in the outer world to some inner impulsion or need within myself. And as long as I deal with the outer with consciousness, I can use that to make the necessary shifts within my own being. So it's a give and take of the outer and the inner, which has been my way of literally doing business with a yogic attitude. Now, most of us see an inherent dichotomy between doing business and having a yogic outlook in life. But as long as one approaches business with awareness and this impulsion to grow with whatever the circumstances of one's business bring onto in front of one, there is no dichotomy anymore, because then the business itself becomes a tool for one's sadhana. One of my earliest realizations, again, while practicing my sadhana or yoga, was that the only person that I was responsible for or had the ability to change was my own self. And also that the answers to all my challenges also lay within myself and not with some outer agency or individual. So this realization kind of brings in both a sense of responsibility for one's state of being and also the key to, I would say, mastery over whatever it is that is plaguing oneself. I must say that I also had the good fortune several years back, pretty early on in my path, to attend some very interesting courses at the Gnostic Center. And thanks to those courses, I got very deep insights as to what exactly I needed to work on my own being, and a lot of tools to help me work on those aspects of my being. As Ameeta, I was just talking, one of the first issues that stared me in the face was the need to cultivate equality in my own being, or samta, which the mother describes as the base camp for setting off on our yogic journey. And so equality, equality of what? Equality towards all that is and to all that happens. And it's not an easy thing to cultivate. One realizes, that most of us turn towards spirituality or any kind of discipline in order to escape the harshness of life, or that which is overwhelming us. We're seeking answers to something that is overwhelming us, again, outside of ourselves. That is the beginning of at least, that was the starting point for me as to why did I turn to spirituality, because I was being overwhelmed with answers that I could not find, right? But I realized gradually that the true spiritual turn or yogic attitude comes when one starts becoming equal to every kind of outcome. You realize that even that which is unpleasant to you is only indicative of something within you that needs to yield or change. And this kind of teaching, which I kind of incorporated into my own business and work, has helped me progress both as a businessman and as an individual, I feel. With every time you hit a wall or you feel that's a shrinking within, it's almost automatic now that I will search for that within myself, which is leading to this shrinking. And often, it's just that little yielding or change in attitude which opens the way forward in your business as well as in your own being. Along with equality, there are so many other aspects of one's being: courage, humility, perseverance. These are all aspects of the Divine Mother as we know them. But these are aspects that we need to work on. And I feel that each one of them, business gives us an opportunity to further ourselves in each of these aspects of one's being. So in my case, I would say, I have stopped seeing any dichotomy or a divergence in the two paths. For me, it's the yogic sadhana and business now go hand in hand. And the other thing that I would also like to share is, like Ameeta, talked of the Gita and Karma Yoga. So, I had the good fortune to first turn to the Gita as a very young teenager. And I read a very elementary translation of it. And this was when I was grappling with issues of impending mortality and, the fear of losing people I loved. And that is when I had turned to the Gita. And over the years, one has read many, many, many translations of the Gita till now finally one is settled with Sri Aurobindo's interpretation of the Gita. And going to Karma Yoga again, Karma Yoga is something that, one has, like, let's say in the very beginning, your interpretation of Karma Yoga was, a shrinking, turning away from all material gain. So, not aspiring for the fruits of labor at that time meant a material shrinking. Later on, as you moved on in business, you realized, okay, you had to go for the fruits of your labor. You had to accumulate wealth if you were going to distribute it. So then it became, more about, okay, a certain part of it must go towards altruism or philanthropy. But now as you progress even further on your journey and you realize that even that is just another egoism. So, and now when you realize that, okay, so today, for me, Karma Yoga means I'm just an instrument of nature, the universe, the divine working itself out. And I have to be equal to any outcome. So when it is, Nishkam Karma today for me means I have to be equal to every outcome that my labor might produce. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this is I feel, knowledge, spiritual knowledge for us, can mean different things at different stages of our journey. right? So what was true for me as a young teenager, as my interpretation of Karma Yoga was true then, right? And my understanding of Karma Yoga is something else today. But that being said, I think as long as one sees oneself as a student of life, then I think there is no need at all to divorce any aspects of life, least of all one's business, from the pursuit of spirituality. So for me, I mean, all life is yoga, and my business is also part of my yoga. Thank you.
Thank you, Amit. Very, very insightful again. What is happening outside is a reflection of what is happening within you, and to use all that to grow as a person. So from here, I'd like to go back to Pariksith, if I may. Pariksith, you're a medical doctor and you're in the health profession at a time when the world is going through, we are all going through a terrible crisis. And I'm sure these last many months, year and a half, would have been, I mean, it's been difficult for all of us, but for you who are looking after people, and just it would be great if you could share some of both. I mean, either it could be challenges that have helped you grow, or some practices that have helped you to continue with your work with the yogic attitude. Pariksith?
Thank you, Sumita. I think the most important thing that helps through, as Ameeta said, is the love and compassion. And despite all the difficulties, there is a love for what we do and love for the people. And that is the connection. So when I'm with patients, it's a very joyous state, and that gives a different feel. All the limitations kind of are pushed aside, and in that state of, even if it's for a few moments, that connection you have with the person is a beautiful thing that sustains me through all this. Yes, the last 1.5 years have been extremely difficult, especially right now. I mean, Florida is going through the surge that India saw 4 months ago, and it's just as devastating here with all the resources that we have, especially in our county. We are probably the epicenter of the surge as we speak. And yes, it is difficult to see one's co-workers pass away. It is difficult to see young people with families, with children devastated, and young people dying. So that's extremely difficult. But I think it's also sustaining to see how other physicians and co-workers have risen to the challenge, and non-stop work they're doing selflessly. And it is very humbling at the same time as it is very enlightening. We know our tremendous weakness, but we also realize in that tremendous weakness what inner strength is possible, which is of course not our own, but something else comes through. As far as practices are concerned, my over the last 35 years, of course, meditation and reading a lot has helped. Writing, creativity, that's being with the arts, has helped a lot. Trying to develop a kind of freedom from oneself, and the awareness that really is not directed towards an end, to have those moments of awareness where even one's own limited personality is kind of like a point in the whole. That helps, that sustains even through the most difficult challenges. But I think the love and compassion is probably the most important thing.
Thanks, Pariksith. And adding to the love and compassion, I think what you said was also very insightful, that it is both humbling and enlightening, you know, especially when we go through difficult times. Next, I'd like to ask Tong. Tong, I don't see her. Is she here? Yeah. Tong, you work across so many countries, and I'm sure there are, you know, cultural differences across all these, you know, different geographies that you work. I'm, you know, you have teams in different parts of the world, and I'm just wondering if you could share with us how you deal with, you know, with your team, with your people. How do you ensure that the work that you are doing, which is, you know, which is transformative, you know, you can, how do you encourage, motivate, or keep your team along with you on your work?
Thank you, Shumita. Wonderful question. I start with my team and later with my clients across the globe. I would say this is also one part of how I apply this yogic practice to business is when I had conception, when I had vision of this business, I offered this to Mother Surbindo to say, whoever needs to be on this endeavor will show up. I'm not going to search. So my partners really showed up and wanted to do that, so that we're so unified on the vision, on what the world is needing in terms of new type of consulting that help businesses evolve and in line with evolutionary movement of the world. So I think that was what we shared was so strong, and that also each of them has a spiritual seeking too on their own personal transformation on different paths. I made deliberately to make this team more diverse, not only the sadhaks of integral yoga, but all from different traditions, but all sincere seekers. So what that shared foundation allowed us to use our differences to complement each other. My Chineseness is complement, my Chinese way of looking at complement by the American results orientation, and by the Dutch directness, and by the French philosophical principle approach, you know, all those things that we can use that to our advantage, I would say. And the second point is that we're all doing social inner work, that our inner work, we can transcend, we can learn and help each other to transcend our national egos, our nationalities confinement of our culture the conditioned us. You see what I mean? So that sometimes culture can use us without we being aware, you know, and but we also become more aware of what national cultural traits that we want to be free from it. In the end, we are, you know, soul that independent of nationality, I would say. The third element is also that in our team, when I run this business, the most priority for me was for everyone, each of the team member, to grow innerly. If while we are together, we are not growing, then something is not okay, because this is not about building a business. It's really about business vehicle for transformation ourselves, around ourselves, and around the world. So that we spend time on that topic. That is top priority, then also even equally important than running the business itself, because in our consulting business, we are the product. If we are having, you know, not inherent wholeness, we cannot bring that work into the work. So we have to be a few steps ahead to do transformation. So that is with the team. I was really grateful that there was luck that I could have a team so diverse yet so unified and mature. And with the client, I think that when I transcend my own cultural you know, confinement, when I become more and more seeing how different cultures is shaping each of us, and yet we are a soul that is limitless, it helped me also to focus on what is essence of my client, so that I could share the humanity and spiritual nature of ourselves. And thirdly, it's very important. Secondly, I have very important work that helped me is really in dealing with cross-cultural differences, really Sri Aurobindo's work on foundation of Indian culture. In that book, he really listed out the right attitude in unifying different cultural differences. You know, which attitude? You prejudge, you negative, you critique, or you open and curious. So for me, working with all different countries, and it's so far it's really a joy of discovery and was expanded. So our perspective is expanded by the different cultures. Normally our culture shape us in this way of looking, but when we are open up, but grounded in our own heritage, then we could really expand. So that difference is, instead of giving conflicts and anxiety, it becomes a joy of discovery. And it's also helped. I married a Dutch man, so I have also cross-cultural marriage of 28 years. So I could tell that that's been also an adventure too, but joyful adventure. Yeah. So I hope I answer your question.
Yes, thanks, Tong. That was very illuminating. And we'll come back later again to some more. I'm sure there'll be questions as well. So Amita, you mentioned when you spoke at the beginning that sometimes one has to, while one can be calm and have a yogic attitude, how does one ensure that complacency doesn't creep in? Because that is something which to me personally in my business is also is a challenge, because if you have done well, if you're doing well, and but at the same time you're not striving to do better. Now better may not necessarily mean more profits, but if that strive for improving oneself is not there, there is a danger of getting complacent. So how do you ensure against that?
I don't actually, Shumita. I think life does. I find that adversity is a great what should I say, pusher towards moving forward. I find, whenever there is some sort of sitting back and enjoying the laurels of one's success, or it could be some sort of complacency, as you've mentioned. I think that there is, things in the outer world, they come and push you, things happen to you, you are met with difficult circumstances or difficult periods or people. I mean, at the moment, because of the pandemic, everything is at a standstill. Our whole business is over, in the sense that the race courses have stopped, no one's buying horses, the GST has almost killed this industry. If you actually look at my business, you will say, wow, I mean, nothing seems to be working there. And yet, we are moving along quite well, in the sense of my own practice has been very much on looking at the positive side of what is happening, and not to get caught up with what's not happening. And that's, I think, one of the biggest practices that I've been doing all the time, is that this gives me an opportunity and time to do so many other things that otherwise one would not have found the time to do. Catching up on reading, doing a lot of webinars, writing a lot of articles, doing music composition, and so on and so forth. And I think it really, in the end, boils down to why one is doing business, or why one is doing anything for that matter. Is it for personal profit, and is it for the aggrandizement of one's own personal ego only? Or is it for a higher purpose? Does one do business because that is what has fallen to one's lot? And one is doing it because one wants to try and offer it and become and grow in one's consciousness through it. Is that the reason? Or is it because one is there to produce and make wealth? And even if one does create wealth, which I think is a very good thing, and I personally don't at all shy away from that, what does one do with one's wealth? These are questions that each of us has to answer for oneself and prioritize. For myself, I find one of the I think that faith in adversity, hope in adversity, is a very important um, attitude to cultivate. And I find that perhaps that's one of my strengths, if I might put it that way. I think, um, you know, um, my weaknesses are far more, and I can enumerate them. Um, so, impatience, anger, um, deep, things like that really upset me. When things don't, when people make such terrible mistakes that cost lives. But I think the two practices, coming back to your question, that have helped me the most, despite a lot of falls and pitfalls and going backwards, because I don't think, anything in life, leave alone doing business, but anything one does in life is a straight line. There's so many ups and downs. You keep going and you keep falling. The falling and the is actually part of the growing, because if you don't fall on your face and you don't really get up and make that change. So the two practices, one is of course of self-reflection and self-observation, and the other one which I want to mention is something I've just learned recently, and I'm an imperfect practitioner of it, but I find it extremely valuable in terms of sharing it. Is what I learned in a book, is called Ho'oponopono, if anyone's heard of it. Dr. Len, he has come up with this fantastic practice where he was the superintendent of a jail, and he had these criminals who were all murderers, rapists, and the worst kind in this jail in I think was it in Hawaii. And he was the superintendent, or sorry, he was a psychologist doctor there. And he would not meet the patients, because if you walked into the ward, you'd probably be, smashed up. So nobody would actually go near them. Their families wouldn't visit them. Nobody would visit them. And what he started doing was taking their case history, one file of each patient at a time. And he started reading through their whole case history. But while he was doing that, he was actually saying all the time, doing the inner work of saying, I'm very sorry, I'm so sorry this has happened. And that compassion and love. So he had these 3 or 4 very, very powerful practices where he would see the point that was in him that also had violence, the point that was in him that also had anger, that was being displayed in a very aggravated way, in a very exaggerated way with the prisoners, with the criminals. And what he found, I think it took him 6 or maybe a year. Within 6 months, there was already a change. He found that the wards, the patients were not so violent. They were not like, as you walked in, they wouldn't come behind you and hit you. And they started displaying certain different signs. And he cataloged this. It's a research. You can read the book. It's called, I think it's called Zero Limits, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and and after that, he started teaching. And what he taught is that, there is always some point where somebody from outside, whatever they may be doing, it has some relevance to yourself. Change it in yourself. Change yourself if you wish to change the world, as the mother would say. But change that in yourself that has that correspondence with whatever it is that you are unhappy with in the situation outside you or in the person outside you. And especially in marriages and partnerships, you'll always have this issue of getting irritated, and angry and upset, or having this disharmony. Well, the first thing, the easiest thing to do is to blame the other. But instead, to go back to yourself, and the same with our workplaces, and see, okay, what is the corresponding point in me that resonates with this? And I've been practicing this, and I found that it is an amazingly liberating practice. And it's really, really helped me in my business. It's helped me with my employees. It's helped me with my customers. I've just completely changed the way that I have been. And I, from being, say, 9 on 10 on the bad scale, I'm now, say, 5 on 10 on the bad scale. So, I really would recommend this book.
Thank you, Amita. That's very interesting way of looking at it. And, what you said about faith and hope in adversity, I think that's something we could all do with, especially in these adverse times. So, as you said, I mean, it's not easy for anyone, because everything has come to a standstill, or most things. But at the same time, it's given us the time to do other things that we never had time for before. And also it stopped us from rushing around from one place to another place. Sometimes now we realize that, we needn't have done that. Very beautifully put. Amit, would you like to add something? You mentioned about practical psychology. And maybe you could share a couple of instances of that, especially in these difficult times that we have recently gone through.
So, Shumita, I mean, talking about the pandemic specifically, one of the things, that I had been working on for a long time, I mean, even before the pandemic, was, of course, conquering the sense of this otherness of being. I have begun to realize that a lot of my personal problems stemmed from this perception of being the other. And, so whether it came to labor relations, or it came to, let's say, dealing with your clients, you are always dealing with the other. And part of then your practical psychology, of course, was also to be able to get out of this sense of otherness, to be able to project yourself into the other person, to be able to see their point of view, right? And I kind of, so with this practice, of course, when it came down to the pandemic, and the one thing that again, which sort of got me, was the amount of fear that was being generated by this disease. I mean, it was almost like disproportionate to the actual outcome. So, there were times, of course, all you were hearing was about the panic all around you. And you'd said that something with that small a mortality rate, as compared to other diseases, which are so much, more deadly, why are we giving into so much fear? So for the initial months of the pandemic, actually, my meditation was around finding a oneness with the virus. To be able, why were we so afraid? And I don't know, at what time it happened, but I just was not afraid of the disease anymore. And I don't know whether that was it or what, but in my entire family, I'm the only one who did not get the virus. So I don't know whether part of me just accepted the virus or what it was, but it's just that I think this fear, this sense of fear is something that I've grappled with it for a very long time. Like I shared earlier, my turning to the Gita was again from a fear of losing loved ones, right? Business for me initially was again about the fear of loss, or the fear of confrontation where it came to labor relations, or, again, loss when it came to clients. So I think fear for me has been a very big battle. And I think the way out from fear has again been this opening and seeing that there is no other. There is nothing to fear. And the other learning, at least for me, that I would like to share is again something that I read where the mother said, that don't try to project yourself on the side of virtue. Now, that was again a big failing with me. of wanting to be seen as being good, right? And, and where she goes on to say that to the extent that you accept that you have failings, that you're liars, you're cheats, and you bring that part of yourself to the light, you're actually doing the divine's work. So, so for me, this has been a time, where all of that, one has been able to bring that out, see your own failings, bring them to the light, and use this time where we've been sort of forced to spend time with ourselves to actually, become hopefully a better person.
Thank you, Amit. I think that resonates with all of us, what you said about using the time to reflect and become better, grow. So I was thinking, Anuradha, we are at 8:30. Shall we open it up for questions?
Yes, that would be good. Yeah.
Yes.
There is a question somebody has put in the box. I can read that out, and others can also, if they want to ask live, they can ask. It says, being a high school educator in business studies, I engage in discussions on these themes with young students. What is your message for these students? Anybody who would like to answer?
Let me take a shot.
Yeah.
The message to students is to love what you do. Keep learning, growing every moment, no matter what you do. Do it the best way possible, and you will never work a day in your life.
Very well said, Pariksith. Love what you do. Yeah. And I'd just like to share here. So in our work also, we have a lot of young students who, this time when education has been disrupted the way that we used to know it, wanting to do internships, wanting to volunteer. And I think that's something that we can encourage much more, that getting a degree is not just a passport to a job, but work can be a way of learning, of growth, of development of your own self, and in the process helping others around you. So would anyone else like to add something to this question? Answer to the question?
Yeah, okay, so if I may, I would also like to add what is, I think, something very relevant to how one needs to approach work, especially for the youngsters. Most of us tend to compromise and accept mediocrity, as long as we can get on with life. And I would like to quote again something from Sri Aurobindo, that perfection in work is true spirituality, right? So seek perfection. Do not, set the bar high for yourself, no matter what aspect of life you choose to engage with. That's all I would like to say. Thank you.
So maybe we could ask some live questions to the audience, Shumita, besides the chat box.
Absolutely. So please go ahead, and you can ask questions of each other as well. Amita, Amit, Pariksith, Tong, Anuradha, and the others. We have 21 participants here.
Can I just respond to this question? I noticed when, I don't know how about youngsters now, maybe this facilitation of question about their life's purpose, why we are here on life purpose. I think when having this type of question will help them to open up a longer perspective rather than what social conditioning giving about, the gadgets or the fashion or money. I think combined with what the Pariksith was saying about this love what you do, but opening up that facilitation, you know, what is the role model, what is what people inspire them in life, how they want to live a life, aims of life. That was what I wanted to say.
Maybe there are some reflections or I from the group, you know, from the larger group, that besides question, there could be also a point of view that anyone wants to share.
Yeah, if I may, Amita and Tong just touched the point, and you started this point, why we do what we do in general. Why suddenly somebody chooses some profession or direction to be engaged in life. There is a hidden, most probably secret aspiration to realize certain qualities or have certain experiences in life. And so choosing from the whole map of possibilities, we choose those which are the closest or could give us tools to exercise those qualities and to have those experiences. That's Svabhava, which dictates us to choose certain tools which look to us in that moment of time as the most suitable for this realization. Suppose somebody wants to become a teacher, but there are so many teachers of different kind with different expectations or needs of self-realization. Someone wants to serve, other wants to learn and to share knowledge. Others want just to find somewhere job because they don't fit anywhere, so they go and become teachers. And there are many, many ways. So professions can be different, but the needs, the inner needs, are have to be found, or we have to discover that first, when we were children, that's what I want to say. You remember, we wanted to be something. We wanted to realize something. It was very fresh in us. And then over time, it became clouded. And so the money, the profession, everything are the means, the tools for something deeper in us. What do you think about this, Amita?
I would agree, Vladimir. I think it is true. But sometimes also, you know, life pushes you into a profession without you wanting it. I wanted to become a educator and I wanted to become a, you know, to do some things, and I was pushed into business. So in some senses, you're right that you know, this is absolutely true. But also the other thing is that maybe there is a deeper intention that the divine has for you. And you are sometimes doing things exactly the opposite of what you had intended to do, and perhaps, and then find that actually that is the correct thing that that life has chosen for you without your choosing it yourself. So yes, both are true.
So Amita, if I may come in here, you have been a phenomenal educator. I mean, I am witness to that. I still hold the courses that you conducted as probably, I mean, having laid the foundation for my journey at least. So big thank you.
Thank you.
If the forum is open to everybody, my name is Jolie Narang. I live in New York. And I would like to say what Sri Aurobindo's, I'm a practitioner, I'm a physician here in New York City. To me, Sri Aurobindo's yoga is delight. You know, his poem is life. It means everything to me. Mystic, miracle, daughter of delight, life, thou ecstasy. I'm in academic medicine. I love what I do. I love teaching. I love taking care of patients. And to me, it's the joy of being an educator.
Thank
Thank you.
you, Julian. I have a question for Shumita, actually. Shumita, you are an entrepreneur yourself in such a scale and with such a big endeavor. I mean, how have you been entered into this? What is the inner need? What's the divine intervention, as Amita says and Vladimir says? How did you start? And how have you applied, which yogic attitudes have helped you in most challenging ways, most challenging situations? What is your practice?
Oh, okay. So yes. So prior to starting this enterprise, I was always a social entrepreneur, but in the not-for-profit and in a what shall I call it, in the voluntary sector or NGO sector as we call it here. And very frankly, after many years of working and a lot of adversities and wins, both, good and bad, I felt somewhere that there was an emptiness within me, that we were in our business, in the not-for-profit sector, being an activist, being a social worker, often talk a lot of things. We like to articulate them well, but it wasn't really translating into difference in people's lives on the ground. So that's when I had been through also, like Amit, gone through a lot of courses at the Gnostic Center. And the one that especially stays in my mind is the power of attitude, and how you can look at a glass half full or half empty. So I decided to look at it half full. And the challenge of, the fact that many rural Indians do not have work because they are dependent on agriculture that is rain-fed, and there are droughts or floods, so people do not earn much. So decided that, okay, what is it that they have? And so, and found that a lot of Indians, especially in the arid regions, are very artistic. They have craft skills, amazing craft skills. So that was what I felt that we could build upon. And as Anuradha said, it was, so it's all very well easy to start a business and to register a company, but no one gives you money, especially if you say you've been a social worker, you have no collateral. I had no collateral. The only thing I owned was a 5-year-old Maruti 800 when I started the business. So that's when decided to go back to people, and the people, instead of looking at them as beneficiaries, which is what we tend to do in the not-for-profit world, to look at them as active participants in their own destiny, in creating their own destiny. And I never really thought that they would invest money, because they're all actually economically poor. But I think somewhere, we were able to understand the value, the hidden value of the knowledge, of the skills, of even the compassion and love that was spoken about before, compassion for each other, knowing that together we can, okay, alone you can't do much because we didn't have much resources. But if we are together, then we can do a lot. And I was very inspired. I am very inspired by this cooperative called Amul in our country, which is actually a milk producers cooperative of farmers who produce milk and supply milk throughout the country and products throughout the world. And a sentence there really, one of their values really inspired me, which said, respect for the producer, the one who's making or producing the goods, respect for the customer, so that you are giving him or her the value that they deserve, and of course, respect for each other. So with a lot of faith, something that Amita talked about, plunged into this. I had no business experience, no family business, no money. So a lot of faith and hope and belief in, in the divine, that, that, okay, let's go for it. Let's start. Let's see what happens. And we've grown, thankfully, touch wood, we've grown. And in these last, last couple of years, in these difficult times, touch wood, we have really used this time to strengthen our base, to do, to ensure that our artisans and our groups and our clusters go from strength to strength. We build capacity, and we have survived and thrived in this pandemic, thankfully. So that's a long answer to your short question, Tong.
Thank you.
It's 8:45. If there are no more reflections and questions, Shumita, then maybe we can wind up.
Okay, so how does one, wind up? Initially, I must say that, when you asked me to moderate the session, I was like a little cynical. How can one do business with a yogic attitude? And I had all these questions about, that I asked, we get complacent. Are you really, is it really possible? But actually listening to everyone, all of you, listening to everyone, leaves me with some very basic learnings, that yes, all life can be yoga, all life, and especially business. And as Ameeta said, you call it karma yoga or business work, can be a path for self-development and enlightenment. It really can be. And it's not, the business doesn't have to be successful in that profitable material way. We all have our ups and downs, but each incident, each stage of the business, whether it's the startup, whether it's the growing, whether it's the dips, and each interaction that one has, whether it's with one's clients or whether it's with one's employees, or or the people who you're working with, can be a source of great learning if we are conscious, and we are aware, and we approach it in that attitude, with that attitude, and can be really a vehicle for self-growth and self-realization, if I may say that. And because as we talk with all very experienced people on the panel, it looks like each one is really growing through, and has grown and has empowered others, not just oneself, but all the people working with them or they work with. So I come away with much more positivity and much more faith and hope that yes, the only way I think to do business is with a yogic attitude, because otherwise one will be miserable and will be sort of flung here, there, everywhere with each little setback one has. So, thank you, Anuradha, for asking me to moderate. I have learned a lot from the session, listening to each one, and I'm sure everyone has learned a lot too. Thank you.
Okay, yes, I want to say something. Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yes.
So my name is Jayashree Blench, and I'm here in Dallas, in the US. I want to thank Gnostic Center, Amita Mehira, Anuradha, Sumita, for this wonderful webinar. My own journey in Sri Aurobindo and the Mother started with Gnostic Center. So I'm deeply indebted to them. Thank you so much, Amita and Anuradha. You're doing amazing. I'm so happy with this webinar. I think each of the speakers has left us with lots of nuggets to really think about and deepen our own practice in, whether we are in business or just a housemaker, everything, no work is too little or too big. And thank you so much. Look forward to all your other webinars. Thank you.
Just a small announcement before we end, that our next webinar is on 16th October. We will be holding every alternate month. And the theme for the next webinar is the challenge of the world crises and our response. You are also free to suggest themes and even suggest if any panelists to us, and we will be in touch. And those of you who haven't shared their emails, because a lot of people are watching on YouTube also, do send your emails in so that we can keep you in the loop. Thank you.